Hello, students of 12th class. We are going to study chapter 1 Indian economy at the eve of independence. In this chapter, we will study about the exploitation of the British rule, which was there in India. And in this chapter, as you can see, that how our agricultural and industrial sector was declining during this colonial rule. And in this chapter, we will study that how the agricultural sector uh, stagnated, which meant that there was no growth in the goods produced in the agricultural sector. And with this, we can see here the heading is given there that the low level of economic development during the colonial rule, which means that the economic development was declining continuously during the rule of the British, because their aim was, or the objective of the British rule was, they wanted to turn India into a supplier of raw material and a consumer of finished products. As you can see here in the on the page given here, you can see that there were several different estimators who tried to estimate the national income and per capita income during that time period. But there were several different estimators. Among those were, you can see here, Dadabhai Naroji, V.K.R.V. Rao, Findlay Shiras, R.C. Desai, and all these were the estimators. But out of all of these, the most notable estimators study was, which was really good, and this was V.K.R.V. Rao. So, according to his method of estimating national income or per capita income, it was found that the real per capita output was increasing near about 2% a year, and there was a very small growth in the per capita income also, uh, near about 0.5%. After this, if you'll see, the agricultural sector during the British rule was stagnated, which meant that there was no growth in the agricultural sector. The reason behind was the revenue settlement system, or we can call it as a land settlement system. In this land settlement system, what happened was that the British introduced some revenue policies for the peasants in some of the areas of India, like that of places in the north of India. Uh, Revenue settlement system was of three types, among which zamindari system was introduced in the north part of India. And in zamindari system, there were peasants from whom the rent was collected by the zamindars and were deposited to the British officials on a particular date. And with this system, there was a problem that the peasants became more and more poor. Why? Because the zamindars were only interested to collect the revenue from the, or rent from the peasants, instead of improving the technology of agricultural crops so as to increase the production in the agricultural sector. After this, in the commercialization of agriculture, what happened that more of cash crops were grown by the farmers, and these cash crops were going to be ultimately sold in the market directly so as to earn more and more profit. But the number of peasants were also not many who can earn this good profit from growing cash crops. On the other hand, if we'll see about the industrial sector, then in the industrial sector we can see that the twofold policy of the British government was that to deindustrialize India. In the deindustrialization policy, the British uh, introduced such type of policies in which the industries which were existing in India, these existing industries like that of handicraft industries also, it started declining, and which proved to be very beneficial in the past, or in a very uh, at that time period when British were not there in India. But during the presence of these British rule, the handicraft industry, which was very very important for India, also started declining. After this, if we'll see here that the twofold motive to deindustrialize India was to turn India into a mere exporter of raw materials and a consumer of the finished goods which were coming into India from Great Britain. And if you'll see here that this was the one very good strategy by the British so as to drain the Indian wealth to their own country. So, if you'll see in the paragraph here, it is written that during the second half of the 19th century, modern industry also began to take root in India, but its progress remained very slow. This means that maybe some new type of industries were coming up during this colonial rule, but these were only in a very small number, like that of cotton textile mills were coming in, and with that uh, the parts of Maharashtra and Gujarat, where these type of cotton textile mills were spreading. With this, jute mills also came up, but we can see here that only some of the industries were coming up or spreading into India. With this, Tata Iron and Steel Company was also one of the very important iron steel industry, which was incorporated in 1907. And with this, sugar, cement, paper industry also came up after Second World War. Now, the problem with the Indian industries was this, that capital good industry was not prospering, and because of which industrialization could not take place. But if you will see here that maybe some new industrial setup was coming up in India, uh, but this new industrial sector could not displace the traditional handicraft industries, because these traditional handicraft industries were producing such type of goods which were world famous, and these goods were even exported from India to other countries of the world. Uh, on the other hand, if you'll see that the growth rate of new industrial sector and its contribution to the gross domestic product was very very small. You can see here that the industrial sector was maybe in the new modern time was growing up, but not to a very good extent. After this, you can see that this sector remained confined only to the railways and power generation, communication, ports, and some other departmental undertakings.
Students, when we talk about foreign trade in India, India has been an important trading nation since ancient times. But the policies of the British for the foreign trade, which was there in India, about the production, trade, and tariff, was actually being confined to the British people's own country, that was Great Britain. That is, more than half of the foreign trade of India was confined to British people, their own country, that is Great Britain, and rest of the foreign trade, which was to be found in India, was with China and Sri Lanka and Persia, that is present days Iran. So, from the time the British started or open up the Suez Canal, which was a shortcut to come to India, so as to take the raw materials from India in a more uh, faster way, so that the drain of Indian wealth should also be uh, moving to Great Britain in more uh, lesser time, and this was why this Suez Canal was opened, or it was being situated in the uh, beyond this Mediterranean Sea and Red Sea. Between this, the Suez Canal was there, and the most important characteristic of India's foreign trade throughout the colonial period was the generation of large export surplus, because the foreign trade also brought about in India a large export surplus, which was not going to bring more and more gold or silver into India, because export surplus means it is a positive item for the inflow of gold or silver into India. But this all did not benefited India, because all this export surplus was used by the British government to make payments for the expenses incurred by an office set up by the colonial government in Britain. And this export surplus was also used for the expenses on war, uh, the war which was fought by British people in Europe. Okay, so all this export surplus was used not for the benefit of the or the welfare of the people of India, but it was just being used for the maintenance of their own offices in Great Britain and also in India.
So, students, when we talk about demographic condition of India during colonial rule, that is British rule, during this time period, the demographic condition, which means demographic means the study of the population on the basis of employment and race and birth rate, death rate of the people living in a particular country. And just now we are talking about India during British colonial period. So the indicators of demographic condition are like that of life expectancy rate and literacy rate, like this. So if you will see this paragraph, you will see here that the first population census was taken in 1881 and in the British India, and the uh, data or record that we got was really very uneven about the population growth of India. Uh, there were two stages of demographic transition, that was before 1921 and after 1921. So what was the condition of the uh, people on the basis of the socio-economic indicators, we can say, socially and economically, what was the condition of the Indian people during the British rule. So there were two stages of it, in which the demographic transition has taken place before 1921 and after 1921. If we'll see here that the overall literacy rate during this colonial period was less than 16%, among which only 7% of the female literacy was found at that time. And if we see that uh, about the public health facilities, it was really very inadequate at that time period, and people were suffering from small type of diseases like that of waterborne and airborne diseases, and these small diseases used to even take the life of a person at that time period. And about the mortality rate, if we talk about, then there is one indicator of demographic indicator which is called as infant mortality rate. This infant mortality rate is the rate of death of infants, a small child who has not even reached to the age of 1 year, and this rate is measured per thousand of the total infant taking birth. So it was 218 per thousand during this British colonial rule, and presently the rate is about 33% only per thousand. This shows that what was the health conditions of the people, or there was really the health facilities, we can say, were inadequate enough, and because of this life expectancy rate, which means average life of a person living in a country, that is India, was 44 years at that time during the colonial period. But after that, in the present time period, we can see that uh, 69 years is the life expectancy rate. So this shows the improvement in the health facilities, which is done till now. But if we compare it with the British colonial rule, it was so miserable, or we can say it was really a tough time period for the people living in the British India at that time period. So it is difficult to specify the extent of poverty even at that time, because the poverty was really spread in a uh, huge area of India, because a lot of wealth of India was drained to Great Britain.
Now, what was the occupational structure during the colonial period in India? The distribution of working persons across different industries and sectors showed a very little sign of changes. And if we see that in India, the largest share of workforce was confined to 70 to 75% in the agricultural sector, while in the secondary and the tertiary sectors, only about 10% in the manufacturing or secondary sector were found, the total workforce, and out of the total workforce, and about 15 to 20% were found in the tertiary sector respectively. So we can see here that India was really a agrarian economy, and if we see that there was growing regional variations also during this colonial rule in India, like parts of Madras presidency, which are present days, which includes directly we can say, which includes present days Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, and Karnataka, uh, Bombay and Bengal, witnessed a decline in the dependence of the workforce on agricultural sector. But on the other hand, we see here that in Madras presidency, people depended more on agricultural sector. But in the Bombay and Bengal, in these areas, there was a decline of dependence of workforce on agricultural sector, and more and more workforce was shifted towards manufacturing and service sectors. But on the other hand, we can see that there was increase in share of workforce in the agriculture sector during the same time period in the states of Orissa, Rajasthan, and Punjab. Now, if we talk about the infrastructure facilities during the colonial rule in India, the British government also introduced railways, ports, water transport, post and telegraph. But all these infrastructural facilities were going to benefit the British people only, because through these infrastructure facilities they used to transport the raw material from India in a more faster manner to the ports which were built up in India, to transport it as quickly as possible to their own countries, own country, that is Great Britain. And even the roads were also constructed, but these roads were also not uh, going to benefit, or they were not constructed taking into account that the Indian people should be benefited from it. But this also were going to these roads were also going to be constructed just to mobilize the army within India so as to maintain law and order. And maybe the railways were introduced in India in 1850. It was going to benefit Indian people to travel long distances from one place to another place, but this benefit of for the Indians were going to be neutralized with the country's huge economic loss of introduction of railways, because This was mainly going to supply the raw material from India in a more faster way to the industries of Great Britain. So, along with the development of roads and railways, even the inland waterways were also being introduced by the British government in India, but these were uneconomical from the time railways was introduced, and therefore, in places like Orissa, some of the scars, deep scars of these canals which were going to be constructed for inland waterways were ultimately abandoned. Hence, we can see in this chapter that how the British government in India exploited India in each and every field of agriculture, industrial, foreign trade, and even in infrastructure. Even our democratic condition was really miserable. So, this chapter tells us about the exploitation of British India, or we can say the exploitation of the British colonial rule in India. Okay, chapter is over. Bye for now.